Hello. This isn't my usual sort of video because I'm not commenting on the news and, well, not really, and I'm not getting angry. So if you want angry and newsy, then this isn't the video for you. I'm going to talk about birdsong. You see, well, okay, let's get on with it. It's a sort of Easter present. You know, you're supposed to be peaceful at Easter. And also it's in celebration of somewhat the easing of lockdowns all over the United Kingdom, one way or another. That's why I'm making this video now. Some years ago, my husband asked me, if you were taken out of time and just dropped into any century in history at all, what sound, just you heard a sound, what sound would tell you you were in the 20th century? Or at least the beginning of the 21st. But he asked me this when we were in the 20th century, so that made more sense. And then, of course, he answered his own question by saying the sound of a car door slamming. And of course, he's quite right. The sound of a car door slamming is a 20th century sound. In all the hundreds and thousands of years of human existence on the planet, that sound would not have been heard before the 20th century by any human ear or any other ear, come to that. And yeah, I know there were cars in the 19th century, but they didn't make the same sounds. I was brought to remember this when I woke up last Sunday morning to the silence of an early Sunday morning street, broken only by the sound of a wood pigeon cooing from one of the trees that in the road outside the house. The deserted road, well, it wasn't a deserted road, but it was an empty road, and there were no car doors slamming or indeed no sound of engines. It was sort of early. I couldn't hear anything except that gentle cooing, and for those of you who might not know what a wood pigeon sounds like, I'll find a recording and I'll play it, so let's hear it. And there were no other sounds because, well, there's far less traffic on Sundays anyway at that time in the morning, but, you know, it was locked down as well, so there's next to no traffic at all. And it reminded me of it being just like the Sunday mornings that I had forgotten about when I was a child, because on Sunday morning in Britain, when I was a kid, there were still Sunday trading laws, which meant that there wasn't much moving on Sunday mornings. And when I woke up, I would hear the sound of the wood pigeon in the trees outside our house. There was a wood quite close to where we used to live. And if I got up late enough, if I woke up late enough, occasionally I'd hear the church bell as well, competing with it, but that was about it. But bit by bit, the Sunday trading laws were relaxed and there was more and more traffic, and now Sunday is like any other day most of the time. Except during lockdown, of course. And I forgot about the silence and the wood pigeons, because in any big city in the United Kingdom, it's a very, very crowded island, and wherever you are, even in big cities, if you're in the middle of a huge park in the middle of the big city, you'll hear that constant roar from the roads surrounding all the time, a constant stream of noise. And I was thinking that the sound of that dove warbling in a silent landscape, it was something I hadn't heard for years. You know, as bad as lockdown has been, and it has been awful, I just want to say before we say goodbye to lockdown, it was just dreadful. We were faced with what at the time could have been a terrifying, life-threatening epidemic of a disease we had no idea about, either how to control or how to treat. And there were people who still had to go to work, and because our nightmare of London, Sadiq Khan, actually cut the trains, they were even more crowded than they should have been. And there must have been people going to work in fear every day, and their husbands and wives in fear every day on what their spouses were bringing back with them besides the dirty collar from the bad air. It was a season full of worry. Bit by bit, we're coming to terms with it. Still, the memory of that wood pigeon was a little gift to me. And so I thought I'd talk to you about two more incidents of birdsong which I experienced, which that dove reminded me of. And one was a quiet evening. It was a summer evening, so it was still light, but the sun had gone down. And suddenly I became aware of the song of a blackbird, and it was perched in a tree across the road from the room where I was working on my computer. And I looked out of the window, and I could see the bird across the road, and I was mesmerized by the sound of his singing. It would have been a male blackbird. I'll find a recording of a blackbird as well to play for you, so it'll be here, I suppose. It held me spellbound for minutes. It was a long time, 10, 15 minutes or something. It's a particularly sharp, bright sound. I almost had a feeling that each note was like a little shard of glass flying through me. There's something rather primal about it. I'm quite sure that some remote proto-human ancestor must have sat and listened to that song as well, perhaps even further back than that. Some shrew-like ancestor of the mammalian species might have heard, well, if not that song, something very similar from a bird, because there were birds before there were decent-sized mammals, weren't there? And maybe the sound is there in some of the oldest parts of our brains. So that's the blackbird. And then there was another time when I was disturbed in my work by the most tremendous row going on in a tree about 3 down from the one where the blackbird was singing, which I just talked about. The noise was so loud, I ran out of the house to get a better look, and the tree was full of crows. There's a collective noun for crows. It's called a parliament of crows. And when I saw what was going on in that tree, I could see why. The tree was divided into two. That is, there were two groups of crows, or they may have been one group that had divided themselves into two, but a whole lot of them were sitting on the tree, all stuffed together like a football crowd. And they were quite obviously members of opposing factions. First of all, one side of the tree would erupt in this raucous croaking, perhaps 20 of them, maybe more. Then they'd fall silent, And then it was the turn of the crows from the other faction, who then burst into a chorus of squawks, rasps and rattles until they fell silent and the discussion was continued by the other side. This went on for about half an hour. I have no idea what they were talking about, but it sure as hell sounded like something important. Okay, so what I suppose I'm talking about is the conflict I feel about the loss of the connection we have all had with the world of nature, and the fact that this computer and the recording equipment I have, which enables me to talk to you about birdsong, that's all stuff which would be impossible except in a crowded high-tech society. The more crowded the world is, the more industry and production we have. So I can't say, oh, would that we were back in a natural world where we could hear blackbirds singing every evening. No, that's the price we pay. There's no such thing as a free lunch. But we can treasure the odd occasion when it happens. And that quiet sound of the wood pigeon in that quiet street, it's something I hope will stay with me for quite a while. Why not treat yourself or a favoured relative or friend to these magnificent examples of merch? The mugs and t-shirts come in the Graniopteryx design or Granbo with a firearm or the more deadly knitting needles. Go to www.graniopteryx.com and whatever platform you're watching this on, please click like, subscribe and share.